Welcome everybody. This is T. Falcon Napier. I'm the founder of the Institute for Productive Tension and the creator of the ChangeWorks program you're about to go through, and I will be leading the discussion for the discovery sessions of the Certified ChangeWorks System Coach training program. Also joining me is Dave Miller. I'll let Dave introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Miller. I'm founder of Business Growth Strategies and also work with T as the Director of Partner Expansion.
So today we're going to be beginning an 8-week program for the designation Certified ChangeWorks System Coach. Let me give you a little bit of an overview of what this program is going to include. So over the course of your training, you're going to be going through a series of 8 discovery sessions. These are all 1-hour recorded sessions that you can do at your leisure. Each discovery session has a companion discussion session. These are also 1 hour long. These are also recorded sessions. In this particular case, Dave leads a discussion of the principles covered during the discovery session with members of the faculty in the ChangeWorks community. And they do some demonstrations, they do some role plays, they have nice discussions about how these principles and tools fit into the actual work that all of you do as coaches. After you've done the discovery session and the discussion session for a particular lesson, you'll also be given a few exercises to do. These are exercises that allow you to practice and apply the tools and techniques that we're covering with your actual client work. These application exercises have been set up to take perhaps an hour of your time as well. After you've completed your exercises, you are encouraged and invited to participate in what we call our dialogue sessions. Dialogue sessions are live programs led by a member of the ChangeWorks faculty. And during these dialogue sessions, you as students are welcome to ask any questions you might like to ask. You are invited to share any of the experiences you've had during those application exercises. You are invited to share whatever those results were with other people on the call and have some discussions around that. In addition, during the dialogue sessions, Dave and the other members of the faculty will be setting up actual role plays that you can have with other coaches who are on the calls. So the dialogue sessions are living, breathing, ChangeWorks learning experiences. No two of them are alike. Now, the dialogue sessions are conducted at least once each week, and you need to complete 8 of those dialogue sessions. They're 90 minutes long each, by the way, in order for you to fulfill the requirements for graduating from this program. When you are all said and done and you've done the discovery sessions and the discussion sessions and you've played with the application exercises and had your interactions with people on the dialogue sessions, you'll then be asked to perform a final demonstration of the skills that you've learned. And so this is with a ChangeWorks faculty member. They're basically going to ask you a series of questions and ask you to do a few demonstrations so that we can stamp you certified with great confidence. Once you have finished all of that, you are then awarded the designation of Certified ChangeWorks System Coach. So this is just a quick overview of what the course contains. When it's all put together, it is about 37 hours of actual training. And so there you are. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and get into lesson 1, the nature of change. And again, this is the discovery session, and discovery sessions are where the core concepts, tools, and techniques are introduced. The discovery sessions tend to be primarily facilitated by me, and then Dave helps to field questions and to chime in when he's got something he thinks is very significant for you guys to hear, to add a level of enrichment to what you're learning. So with that, let's begin with the very first question I want all of you as coaches to ponder, and that is, are humans by nature resistant to change? are humans by nature resistant to change? Now, I've been teaching this program for 35 years, and I assure you that virtually every audience member and virtually every program I've ever conducted have said, oh yeah, absolutely, you bet, absolutely, humans are resistant to change. But as Thomas Paine said in Common Sense, a long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it the superficial appearance of being right. So we've heard that people are by nature resistant to change, and we've read about it. It's happened so long, so often from so many directions. We all kind of drank the Kool-Aid, and we've all come to just believe this as being a truth. But we don't need to apply this to any grand sort of way in order to find a contradiction. We could just apply that belief to daily living. If it were true that by nature people were resistant to change, we wouldn't go to school, we wouldn't date, we wouldn't get a job, we wouldn't do any of these things. Go on a vacation, buy a house, get a new hairstyle, start a business, support a charity. We wouldn't do any of these things because all of these things are very common examples of the words you see at the top of the screen. These are very common examples of changes. Changes that we not only do not resist, but we in fact devote tremendous amount of our time and our energy and other resources to making these sorts of things manifest themselves in our daily lives. And so I understand where this belief came from, that people were by nature resistant to change, but you don't have to dig too deep to find that belief is inherently flawed. Now, as we'll get into in a couple of minutes, even though people may not be resistant to change, we still all encounter a great deal of resistance when we are talking to people who are undergoing a change or considering a change, or a change is heading their way. We certainly have plenty of times that we ourselves are resistant to doing something. But what's going to be very important in this training is that you understand from the very beginning is that humans are not resistant to the change process itself. They are resistant to something else. And we'll be identifying that in just a few moments. So, and here's another thing to kind of know about change, and this is lock, stock, and barrel for the essence of what you're all doing for your careers as coaches. All of our clients have at least one thing in common. They want something to change. So know that this idea about change is so central to what we're doing as coaches. It is the lifeblood of the businesses that we run. If clients didn't want something to change, they would have very little, if any, reason to speak to any of us, let alone anyone else, in the field of human development. So all of our clients have at least one thing in common, and that is they want something to change. Now, the changes they want can be very different, obviously, but they fall into three big categories. When clients come to us, they come to us because they're looking for our assistance in helping them to solve a problem, helping them to seize an opportunity, or helping them to satisfy a need. Those three S's are kind of like the engine that powers the relationship that we have with our clients. The whole reason why the client is there is because they have some issue that they are trying to deal with, and through the coaching process, they hope to deal with it more effectively, and so they're trying to solve whatever that issue happens to be. Or they think that there's something they'd like to add to their reality, add to their life, enrich their life. So some sort of opportunity they'd like to really grab hold of and do a great job of transitioning into whatever that opportunity may be. So that could be a new job search they're going on, a total career change, finding deeper life purposes. But one way or another, they have some sort of an opportunity that they envision, and they are looking for our support in helping them to seize that opportunity. And then the third thing that's certainly a possibility is that there is some specific need that they are trying to address, they're trying to satisfy. And I think a lot of executive coaches in particular deal with this. So they're working with a corporate client. That corporate client has designated someone as having a high level of leadership potential, but they believe that in order for that person to really move into that leadership role, they're going to need to check off at the very least that they've gone through some coaching, that they have explored some particular issues about themselves or about that role. And so sometimes what is compelling that coaching client to come to us is that it has been perhaps mandated is too strong of a word, but highly encouraged, it's expected, or even inside of an open relationship, there may be some specific need that that client is trying to address. So I just hope that you see the whole shape of things. All of these are ways that that word change expresses itself in the lives of our clients and the objectives that they have. So we are there to support our clients as they go about solving problems, seizing opportunities, and satisfying needs. Any questions, comments, thoughts about this, Dave, or so far so good?
So far, so good.
Great. So change is, let's look at it at a little bit broader level. Change is the central activity of the human experience. Now, by that I mean that at all times, all of us are always undergoing this change process. We're somewhere in this. So, and multiple processes can be running simultaneously. Many issues can be affecting our lives simultaneously. So here's the change process. And this is something that we're all kind of programmed to do at a very primal sort of level. So the change process, 3 steps. Step number 1, we are constantly evaluating our situation. We are always looking at the world around us to determine if we are 4 things. Those 4 things are we safe, secure, happy, and healthy? Now, those of you who have studied the work of Maslow have certainly learned about the hierarchy of needs, and this is somewhat related to it, but I think it's much more fundamental, much more primal. So I'm talking about the change process as we as a biological organism experience it. So as a biological critter, we are always looking at the world around us to determine if we are physically safe. Is there a threat in our environment? Is there a predator that's coming towards us? If we are safe enough, at least for the moment, we kind of move on and say, all right, well, am I secure? Do I have shelter? Do I have food? Do I have whatever it is that I need in order to feel that I will be okay? No imminent threat, that's a safety issue. This is about taking care of myself and probably my offspring, if I really want to be primal about the whole thing, in the moment and in the foreseeable future. So am I squirreling away enough nuts for the winter? Do I have enough firewood set aside in order to keep myself warm in the winter months? Do I have these necessities of human survival, human comfort maybe as well? So, and then the third thing is, am I happy? So if I'm safe and I'm secure, now I move on to, well, am I happy? Am I content? So maybe I do things in order to bring myself some sort of joy or satisfaction. So I'm listening to the sounds of nature. I'm basking in the sun. I'm playing. I'm having some sort of something that makes me happy. And then the fourth one is healthy. So we all have, again, primal level grooming rituals that might be happening at a very instinctual level. But these are things that don't require a tremendous amount of attention because they tend to be being done rather automatically. Now, if we advance this to modern life, those 4 things still hold true, but there's going to be a funny situation that happens with those last 2. So as a modern human being living in our evolved society, we still concern ourselves with matters of safety. If we're walking around someplace late at night and we hear a twig break behind us or we see a strange shadow in the streets, this is going to demand our immediate attention. We're evaluating our situation to see if there is an imminent threat around us. Assume there isn't for a matter, and most of what our life is really consumed by are matters of personal security. So do we have enough money saved? Do we have enough job stability that we know our income is protected? Do we have food? Do we have shelter? Do we have clothing? And again, this extends to all of our dependents and those we love and care for as well. So are we safe? Are we secure? Now, the next two are very interesting, and we do end up in a big debate on this when we are in our role as coaches. And certainly if you just watch the news, you'll see that there's plenty of evidence about what's going on here. Now, many of us would say, well, issues of health are actually more important than issues of happiness. So we really should be doing those things that we know will make us happier, or rather more healthy, even if we sacrifice a little bit of happiness. So have that extra piece of cheesecake and yeah, watch a movie instead of going exercising. So our lives are filled with this battle that happens between matters of healthy choices and matters of happy choices. And if we fill our lives with far more happy but unhealthy choices, we could end up with a very big issue that needs to be dealt with. So those of us who can actually say through good health, we can find even greater happiness. So while we may be sacrificing some short-term pleasure for a longer-term healthy lifestyle, we can fix all that. So I think a lot of us in our role as coaches are encountering clients who are having a battle right now between issues of happy and issues of healthy, and helping them to see what those choices are that they're making and other choices they could be making, exploring what the consequences are of the different choices that are being made, and supporting them in moving towards the healthier choices that they'd like to be making. This is certainly part of what common coaching relationships seem to center on these days. But we do, in our role as coaches, help people certainly with security issues and perhaps even safety issues, although generally speaking, safety issues are about threats in the immediate moment, and probably a coaching appointment isn't happening in that very immediate moment. That being said, we do have coaches among our team that are working with interventions, that are working in crisis sorts of situations, and so they may have a stronger likelihood of helping people that are dealing with true issues of safety. But for the rest of us, definitely matters of security, because that's where opportunities are, that's where problems are being solved, etc. And certainly this interesting battle between what is happy and what is healthy. Any comments, thoughts about that, Dave?
Well, and I know you're going to get into this in a big way coming up, but when I look at the change process and I look at step one, evaluate your situation, there's kind of a clue there. And if you're dealing with a client who isn't changing, when you look at that. So that just a thought that came to my mind as you're talking through this. Not
Yeah,
only what causes them to make a change, but what causes them to get stuck on number one and not go to number two.
very interesting. Great, great, great. You want to share a little bit more? Is there a particular story there that comes
Well,
to mind?
yeah, I'm just, because I always get curious, and I'm sure a lot of coaches are the same way as to what stops people from changing, what prevents them from wanting to make a change. And I think there's two scenarios here with number one. Either they're evaluating their situation and they're meeting those four conditions. They feel like they're safe, secure, happy, and healthy. So there's no need to change. Or maybe they're not really even evaluating their situation. I guess they always do subconsciously, but maybe they're not really paying attention. So
All right, because I think you're right. A lot of people at step one of the change process, I mean, people do live in a state of denial, and with every word they utter, and maybe even the superficial thoughts and feelings they have, they may be going, "Yeah, I'm safe. Yes, I'm secure. Yes, I'm happy. Yes, I'm healthy." But if we can help them do a little bit of a deeper dive, question their confidence around that particular belief system, we may very well help them to discover that they are not as safe, as secure, as happy, or as healthy as they are professing to be or trying to convince themselves that they are.
yeah, and John just made a comment on the call that sometimes people are so focused on short-term their short-term situation versus long-term issues too. So
Exactly. 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 Okay, well, so let's just say that people do perform step one, they've done it themselves, and they've realized that they are not as safe, as secure, as happy, or as healthy as they'd like to be, or you working with them have helped them to discover that they are not as safe, secure, happy, or as healthy as they'd like to be. And then they say, you know what? I want things to be different. I'd like to implement some sort of a change. And so they start to find other possibilities, things that they hope will help them be more safe, secure, happy, or healthy on their own. And they implement those things. And maybe they have success and maybe they have struggle in doing so, but they try something. Or they come to you and say, I'm looking for other options. I don't know how to become more safe, more secure, more happy, more healthy. Work with me. Let's work together. Let's try to discover what that is. And sooner or later, they arrive at some sort of an action, and they decide to take that action. They implement that change. They do whatever. Now, they move on to step three. They assess the result. Did it work? So if I wanted to solve such and such a problem and I implemented this as my solution and it worked, great. Life goes on. But if I recognize I have an opportunity I'm trying to seize and I'm doing something that I think will help me get there, but it just doesn't seem to be working, the result that as I'm assessing it is not what I'm really hoping for, what does nature tell me to do? So nature tells me, well, you're going to have to implement a different change. You're going to have to then evaluate that action plan or that strategy that you've decided to use. We're constantly reevaluating our situation, implementing the changes, assessing the result, and this could either then allow us to move forward, or it could tell us you got to cycle back. You're going to have to try something else. So for example, I'm a very strong believer that when a client has a problem or has an opportunity or has some sort of a need that ultimately results in them reaching out to you, you are probably not the very first thing they tried. Probably they tried something on their own. Maybe they just had a thought that X might work, and so they tried that. Or they watched a video, or they read a book, or they went to a lecture. They go, I'm going to try that. And so, in all likelihood, we are not the very first line of attack. We are not the first resource that someone has tapped into. So in all likelihood, they've been evaluating their situation. They've been implementing those changes. But when they've assessed the result, they've said, I'm still not getting there. Nothing I've been doing really seems to be working. There must be a better way. There must be another way. And that may very well be what has led them to engaging your services as a coach. Thoughts about that, anyone?
nothing there at this point.
Okay, all right, good. But certainly, sometimes silence just means they all get it, they all resonate with it, and they're processing it. So we just want to make sure during these calls that anyone who has questions or comments, that we can weave them in just to enrich the experience of the listeners. So the change process. Evaluate your situation, implement a change you think will help you, become more safe, secure, happier, healthy, assess the result, and then see what happens. But keep in mind, it's nature that's driving this process, nature. So change is at the heart of every relationship, and this is something that certainly comes up very frequently in our work as coaches. So let's take a look a little bit about this whole idea about change as being part of the relationships we have with other people and the relationship we have with ourselves. So here's a little universal truth. Humans are influential by nature. And so if you think about this, apply this to your daily life. Whenever we think we have a better way of doing something or we discover something we think is just wonderful, we don't tend to keep that information to ourselves. We have a tendency to share it with others. And so we are a species that does well by working as a collective. And so we are influential by nature. We are always trying to subtly or very profoundly influence other people. And sometimes they're trying to influence us, and sometimes we're just trying to influence ourselves. So if we can think of influence as just being another word for change, but this is instead of us making the change ourselves, this is about us doing the things that are trying to impact the way that other people believe or act or feel about a particular situation. And as a result of that attempt to influence, they may very well make a choice that if we're trying to influence them, hopefully it's the choice we wanted them to make. And if they're trying to influence us, hopefully it's the change or the choice that they wanted us to pick. So humans are influential by nature. It's just part of it. Now, this is something that ends up becoming a very interesting and I think powerful tool for you to use in discussions you're having with your clients. So we're going to briefly introduce you to these change clusters, as we call them, and talk ever so briefly about how you could use this in your client work. During the discussion session, the faculty members will actually do a deeper dive into using this tool as a structured sort of dialogue. So in its core form, you'll just see there are two different clusters of circles. The only difference between the clusters is the directions that the arrows point in relation to the central circle. So let's take this a little bit deeper and show you what's going on. So first of all, we say everybody wants you to change. So we are all surrounded by all kinds of people who are coming at us from every angle you can think of that are trying to influence our behavior. And so certainly your parents when you're younger, maybe even to this day, are trying to influence you. They see a better way for you to believe or act or live or whatever. They're trying to do that. Whenever we had teachers or professors, they were trying to influence us to learn certain things, practice certain things, apply certain things. Certainly advertisers. You can't turn on the television, you can't go to a movie, you can't open up a publication without someone trying to influence you through an ad. So trying to get you, politicians are trying to influence us, every person you've ever dated. So anyone that you work with, live with, the Surgeon General, religious leaders, your pets. So you just look at this list. This is a very short list of all the different categories of people that we all encounter throughout our life that are trying to influence us to change. Now, they may very well have their own agenda and they're trying to impose that agenda on us. They may know that we have a personal agenda and they're just trying to help us out. But one way or another, we are surrounded by people who want us to change. Now, we can take this into the form of an exercise with our clients by saying, here's what I'd like you to do. And by the way, you can use this form or you can just use a piece of scratch paper, do it on a white, whatever it is, a journal. The shape that this takes is irrelevant. The exercise is what's important. And so what we want to do in its essence is say, okay, you client, put yourself in the middle and go ahead and start writing down the names or initials of the people that are trying to influence you or the people who want you to make a particular change. So perhaps this is in a business setting and they're writing down the names of colleagues or supervisors, leaders that are trying to influence them, or clients, or their own customers or clients that are trying to influence them. In their personal life, maybe they're surrounded by people who are trying to influence their behaviors, their choices, etc. So you can apply this in any sort of dynamic that you want. But here's what I want you to know as you're using this tool. As they write down those names, You want them to think about the specific change that they believe that person is trying to influence them to make. So we don't just want to make a general list of people who are trying to influence, because that list would be, well, ridiculously large. Again, we're surrounded by people who are trying to influence us. So generally, when we're having a coaching discussion, we're saying, all right, you've come to us with a problem or an opportunity or some sort of a need, and you've identified that it's about relationships and how other people are interacting with you and you're interacting with them. So let's think specifically about that for a moment. Who are these individuals that are trying to impact you in this particular situation? And what exactly is it that they're trying to influence you to do? Now, the client can keep those thoughts in their own mind. They could share them with you as part of the dialogue, but we're trying to create this cluster of influence. Now we're going to ask them one more question about those. So we're saying this, and I'll just say, so when you think about that particular individual and the change that they are trying to influence you to make, do you feel positively, negatively, or neutrally about what they're encouraging you to do? If you feel positively, let's put a plus sign by their circle, by their little spot there. If you feel negatively about it, let's put a nice minus sign. And if you're on the fence, you kind of see a case both ways for it, let's just put a little wavy line there so we know that, you know, the jury is still out on that one. So as you encounter people that are trying to influence you with their own agenda or trying to help you with whatever agenda you've said, they're going to suggest things that you are going to feel positively, negatively, or neutrally about. And by the way, we don't want this to become a deep dive, intellectual, logical process. We're just saying, hey, when you think about that, you have a particular reaction to it, or you have a particular feeling about it. Is that feeling right now positive, negative, or neutral? Now, in your role as a coach, you could certainly ask them now to elaborate. So why do you feel positively about this particular situation or this particular attempt to influence? Or why do you feel negatively about it? Or why are you on the fence? And certainly those kinds of questions can reveal tremendous amounts of useful information and reveal areas that you might want to pursue in greater detail. But this right now is kind of like at the inventory level. Let's list everybody. Let's think about those specific changes each one of them is trying to influence you to make, and let's identify, do I feel positively, negatively, or neutrally? Now, during the discussion session, the faculty members will certainly talk a little bit more about what would happen next in a coaching dialogue, but all of you that are listening to this call are already fully certified coaches. You can certainly imagine the dialogue that this would all lead to. Dave, any thoughts, comments from anyone?
Yes, Jane made a comment to trust your initial intuition of positive, negative, or neutral.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, and again, because that's what we're dealing with. It's like, how is the client perceiving that attempt there? And let's give all these people in the circles the most noble motive possible. Let's say that their heart is coming from entirely a pure and benevolent place. Nevertheless, in the instant that someone mentions whatever it is they have in mind, I'm going to have a response, positive, negative, or neutral. We don't need to feel one way or another about each of those assessments. We just need to recognize them for a moment, and then we can explore them and see what learning there is available there. Okay, so again, that'll be discussed in far greater detail on the discussion session. But let's look at it from another angle. You also want everybody to change. I know often we've said, you know what, you really can't change another person. And I'll tell you that if we had a bottle of wine, I would be more than happy to discuss and debate that with you as long as you would like. So there are many, many people who continue to believe that we are not capable of changing another person. Only that person can change themselves. But we can find plenty of examples where we say, I may not be able to change them directly, but I do believe I can influence them by giving them different insights, different understanding, different options. They may view their situation differently and take another action as a result of that. So we are surrounded by people that we want to change, and maybe we do have our own little agenda, hopefully not in your role as a coach, but in your role as someone who just lives on this planet. You may have a large list of private agendas that you would love it if the rest of the world would just get in line and do whatever it is you want them to do, the way you want it done, and the moment you want it done. So this is just part of being a human. So we want everybody to change. And even if we don't have a private agenda, if we do have someone in our life, and again, take yourself out of your specific role as a coach, just friends and family members, and they're going through whatever they're going through, you may have insights to share with them. You may have opinions you want to share with them. So even that falls in this category of trying to influence or support someone in the change process. So anyway, it's the same people. So you'd like to change your parents as well, particularly those of you that are dealing with parents that are getting up in their years and now they need to make some other sorts of life choices and are struggling to do that. We need to help them. We need to, assist them if we can, influence them. And sometimes, depending on the situation, we might need to impose a particular change on them, given a certain set of circumstances. But it's the same thing true. Your clients, your children, your neighbors, these people are people you're trying to influence as well. So obviously, the truth, if we're really willing to accept the full expression of this influence we've talked about so far, is humans have a herd instinct. We want to all work together at a certain level. We're all trying to get along. We need to form, families and larger groups and neighborhoods and cities and societies and civilizations. We have a herd instinct, and so this element of influencing one another is central to that work of being a good herd, a healthy kind of a herd. So when we are trying to influence others, the same diagram comes into play. The only difference is that now you're still in the middle, but now the arrows are pointing to others. And this is certainly something that comes up a great deal of the time when we are doing coaching work. We are surrounded by people that for whatever reasons, we are trying to influence. So is that in our role as a leader in a corporate setting? Is that our role in our role as being a leader of a community, sort of a team? Is that just us working with our friends or our family members or our children? We can apply this to an infinite variety of situations, but the dynamic is going to be the same. We, as the client, are in the center, and we are surrounded by people that we are trying to influence, and whether that is because of a private agenda or whether that's because we're just trying to help them, this dynamic is still in play. So here what we're going to do is the same thing. We're going to write down the names or initials of the people that we are trying to influence. And as we write down those names or initials, we're going to ask ourselves, what is the specific change that I am trying to get this person to make, or I'm trying to assist this person? And again, before I go further, in your role as a coach, you're in the middle of this and you are surrounded by clients. And maybe the word isn't get them to change. Maybe the word isn't influence. Maybe the word is support. And so I'm surrounded by people that I am simply trying to support. We still have to be able to answer the question, support them in doing what? Well, in the case of a client, support them in whatever it is that they brought to this coaching discussion. But support is just as useful of a word as anything else. Now, the one thing that's going to be different is that last time around I said, you want to ask and answer the question, how do you feel about that particular change? Do you feel positively, negatively, or neutrally? Well, it's a little bit different when we're looking about who we're trying to influence, because the truth is that I already know how we feel about all those changes. We feel positive about everything that we're advising, whether it's a private agenda, whether we're just trying to help a friend or a family member, whether we are actually working and supporting a client. I can kind of see what the desired outcome is, and it's good. Well, that's not the question we want to ask and answer. We want to ask the question on behalf of the client that I'm working with. So again, I'm in the middle. On behalf of the client I'm working with, does the client feel positively, negatively, or neutrally? Obviously, in our role as coach, the best way to get the right answer is to ask them. about that. But again, if you take this and apply this to daily life, you may not be able to ask the person. You instead have to predict, are they going to feel positively, negatively, or neutrally about this change or this piece of advice or whatever? Or do I believe that right now they are feeling positively, negatively, or neutrally? And one other thing I'd like to throw out, without complicating this too much, but just so you can see the diversity of the application of this really simple exercise, is rather than putting people, an individual, inside of each of those circles, I can put collectives in there. So in a business setting, I could put particular teams. I could put groups of customers, so or groups of prospects that I'm trying to target. How do they feel about the change that we're trying to introduce, or whatever the case may be? So again, on the discussion sessions, the faculty members will go into this in detail, but certainly I hope all of you realize that you have had your own coaching experiences where this is the situation that you're trying to explore in more detail. Who is this client trying to influence, or do they need to influence? Like, for example, if they're going for a job promotion, they're going to need to influence whoever that decision maker happens to be. And then they're going to have to, process through that. So this is in play. Any thoughts, comments about this one, Dave?
No, I think you're talking about a couple ways to use this, right? Where if you're a coach, you could be doing this with a client where the client's in the middle,
Yep.
or you could do it with yourself where you're in the middle and you're dealing with your clients around the outer ring, correct?
Exactly, because
Okay.
we're all
Yep.
we're all the same. We're all the same. The role
Exactly.
that we're looking at may change, but we're all the same. So all of us are always being influenced, and in situations where we can be of influence, or need to be of influence, or want to be supportive, whatever word you want to use to describe the dynamic. Yep. Okay. Now, the third way to look at this is that you want you to change. And perhaps this is the most common situation that you will encounter in your work as a coach. The client is coming to you because they want to change something about themselves. They want their own life to change. Yeah, they may talk about other people that are trying to influence them, or people they need to influence in order to get to where they want to go. But probably what's essential to the dialogue is that there's something about themselves that they are looking to change. So whether those are goals, purpose in life, their career, maybe it's something physical like health, lifestyle, weight, their diet, maybe it's something about what they're actually accomplishing. So legacy, all these things that you see here can very much be subjects that come into play during a coaching session. So is it personal growth? Is it about retirement? Is it about your financial situation, your friends, your routines, life work balance? Many, many, many things that didn't make the short list can certainly resonate with what I've shown here. But you get the idea. You want you to change as well. Now, we can still use those circles to explore that. And this, again, a very powerful, simple but powerful tool to use with clients. Put yourself in the middle. In fact, you could do this, and when we are doing your application session this early in your training, we do give you exercises for self-application, and this is one of them. Put yourself in the middle. And now around you, list the kinds of changes you're trying to make for yourself. So are you trying to grow your business? Are you trying to do something about your personal health? Are you trying to do something? What are these categories? What are the changes that you are trying to influence yourself to make? So we all, you've heard it countless times, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We all have plenty of things that we intellectually recognize would be a better situation, something we'd find very desirable. But for whatever reasons, we don't get all the way there all the time. So we encounter issues along the way. And so we're going to list all those different goals, objectives, whatever, that we have for ourselves. And then we're going to step into the confessional, and we're going to be as honest as we possibly can in answering this question. When I speak my heart's truth, do I genuinely feel positively, negatively, or neutrally about whatever the specific change is that I believe I'd like to make for myself? Now, we'd like to believe that all the changes that we have in mind for ourselves are changes that we genuinely feel absolutely positive about, we're excited, et cetera, et cetera. But as we start to really speak our heart's truth, we really go in and have that dialogue with ourselves, we might find out that in truth, we don't feel all that positive. We're still on the fence. So sure, I see plenty of positive stuff, but you know what? Change often requires sacrifice. And am I really willing to sacrifice those things that are necessary in order to have whatever that particular objective may be? Or bottom line, is this on my list purely because it's some sort of a should that got imposed on me by watching enough media and listening to enough people in my life that are trying to go like, of course you should, and I put it on my list of changes, but truth is I don't want it on my list at all. So, so it's really important, I think, when you're working with a client to do this kind of quick survey from the very beginning. What are these life issues you want to look at? And let's really figure out, what do you feel truly positively about? What are you on the fence about? And what does your heart really tell you? I'm just not on the board with it at all. All right, so thoughts, comments about this one, Dave?
Yeah, Jane made a comment, one of our coaches, saying this tool comes in handy when a professional goes from having direct reports to a position of influencing, igniting, and inspiring ideas.
That's wonderful. Jane, you want to say more about that?
I've worked with people who have gone from positions where they have the accountability of direct reports to ones of being support and influencing without the direct reports, a matrix type of influence. And using this tool helps them to realize you can't just command and demand that something gets done. Your way of being is now showing up differently. And how do we influence, ignite, and inspire people for the change or the activity you're wanting to happen? So I've used this in that way, and people get it because they're so used to the position power of just saying, well, I say do it, they do it. And now they're in this new position and it offers a different insight.
That's wonderful. And I'm glad you brought that up, because another way that you can use this tool is, instead of putting yourself in the middle or putting your client in the middle, put your role or the role of the client in the middle. Because if you think about this, it could be the exact same set of people in the exterior circles that need to be influenced. But if in the middle I'm the boss, that's going to be a very different dynamic than if in the middle I'm a mentor, or if someone else who's actually going to be doing this. So you can put a lot of different labels in that center. And from a developmental experience, or those that are doing executive level coaching, you could say you are moving from being a peer who is trying to influence these people to now being a team leader who's trying to influence these people, to now being the boss who's trying to influence these people, to now being a mentor of their new boss, the person who you have put in place as your not replacement, but your successor in that role. How are you going to mentor them now? So you're kind of moving ever so closer and closer in terms of power, and then you're backing away from that immediate power. Does that resonate with what you were saying, Jane?
It does. And
Okay.
many times people will, organizations I've been working with, they've gone from direct position power to projects, initiatives. So now you've got a cross-functional people of people who don't report to you, yet you're accountable for the outcome. So now the influencing comes into place. So yeah, you resonated with what's happening.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
one last thing I'll share about this is that depending on your role in the middle, the way the people are feeling that change can change. So for example, if you are my peer and you're trying to influence me, maybe I'm more likely to feel positive, negative, or neutral about what you're telling me. But if you go from being my peer to being my boss, a new level of resistance may be triggered, or a new level of acceptance may be triggered. So very often in this change dynamic in relationships, how someone is going to respond to that particular change can be impacted by the role they see you as the person who's advising or influencing or supporting that change might be making. So a very interesting dynamic, and I know it's a very simple diagram and it's a very simple concept, but I think it's a very powerful one to stimulate deep and meaningful dialogue with clients. But in a moment, I'm going to introduce another concept that is suddenly going to take this diagram to a whole new level of value. Before I do that, any other comments, thoughts, anyone would like to share?
Nope, none so far.
All right, so let's move on. So again, we're talking about change is the heart of every relationship. Change is also the purpose of every job. And this is going to hold true. I don't care what the job is that someone has out there, but whatever it is someone's being paid to do, change is somehow related to that. And we can talk about that if you guys need to get in more detail. But I would say just kind of know going into this that whether I'm the janitor cleaning up an office building, through those tasks I'm performing, I'm enabling other people to make changes or make changes more easily. If I am in my role as a human development professional, certainly this is very clear. So the whole purpose of my job is to support the change process. If I'm a business leader, if I'm a parent, so the whole purpose of that job is change. But it's really interesting. Pardon me. When you start thinking of yourself as being a change agent, I think something very powerful happens. So as a change agent, what we're saying is that through you, other people are enabled to make some sort of a change that without you, they would find more difficult, if not impossible. And so, as you start to embrace your role as a professional coach, recognize that you are a change agent. How you go about influencing that change is very different than if you were in a different role. But nevertheless, through your efforts, you are enabling other people to make changes for themselves that they would otherwise find more difficult, perhaps even impossible. So everyone's a change agent. And that gets us into this question. And I mean, the self-application exercises, we do ask you to do this. We want you to answer the question, what changes do you help people make? Now, I'll tell you that as I ask coaches this question, I get two very different answers. So the first answer that I get is, well, I help them to get the job that they want, or to help them start the business they want to start, or I help them to find their life purpose, or I help them to do this, I help them to do this, I help them to outcome, 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 outcome. I help them to get whatever this desired outcome happens to be. And interestingly enough, I believe that it is the client who gets to their outcomes all by themselves. So in my role as a coach, I don't produce those outcomes. You know, if I'm coaching someone who's trying to go and get a promotion, I'm not the one holding the interview. I'm not at the interview. They're getting these accomplishments, these goals through their own real efforts. The changes that I am helping people make, now we're looking at the second set of answers I get to that is, I help people to get clarity around whatever their current situation happens to be. I help them to be more definitive about what it is they're looking for so they can see it and smell it and taste it in other ways. I help them to look for options and alternatives. I help them to weigh out what the relative merits of those alternatives may be. I help them to make choices. I help them to stay on track. These are the things that so the changes that I am making are really more the internal changes in the way that that person happens to be thinking and believing and feeling. And as we help them with those sorts of changes, they in turn go and do more of the external sorts of changes. And I think this is a wonderful dialogue to have with people. So when you come to the dialogue sessions, This is going to be the kind of a subject you might want to bring up to have an open discussion with your other peers that are on that call and with the faculty members that are doing the live calls as well. So, but for the point here, I just want you to kind of know that the changes that you help people make could be very different than the changes the people that you are helping actually want to make for themselves. So Dave, any thoughts on that? I don't know if I've explained that as well as could be. So anything you'd like to add to that, or any of the people on the call might like to add?
No, I think it's great. What you said, I thought that was really clearly explained.
So I think it's really important that all of you spend some time thinking about the specific changes that you as a coach are helping your clients to make, and how that's different but supportive of the changes that your clients have said they want to make coming into the dialogue. So in summary, change is the central activity of the human experience. It is the heart of every relationship. It is the purpose of every job. So if change is so much a part of the human experience and we're not resistant to change itself, then what are we resistant to? Where does this resistance come from? And how do we deal with that resistance when we encounter it? So again, we talked earlier, people might feel positively about the change. They might feel negatively about the change, resistant to that change. They might even be on the fence, and even there's this element of resistance. So if they're not resistant to change, then what are they resistant to? And what is it that we need to do to help them deal with that resistance? We'll talk about that on our next call.